Welcome to another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum where all voices matter. Ever wonder where the electricity will come from to power electric vehicles, factories, and homes? Our next guest has responded to the federal government's clean electricity regulations. Please welcome Francis Bradley, the CEO and president of Electricity Canada, to the program. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me onto the show.
No worries at all. I guess the first order of business is, can you introduce Electricity Canada and its role to our audience?
Sure. We were previously known as the Canadian Electricity Association. We represent the 40 largest electricity generators, transmitters, distributors in every province and every territory. So everything from the large crown corporations like Hydro-Quebec and Ontario Power Generation to the major independent and privately owned power producers like Capital Power and TransAlta Utilities.
Okay, so you're nationwide, big or small, doesn't matter, right?
Big or small, all 10 provinces, all 3 territories.
Fantastic. I guess first order of business then is, can you describe the clean electricity regulations, how they came about and what their goals are?
Yeah, so the government of Canada has had an objective, in fact, 2 objectives with respect to net zero. One of them is a net zero economy wide by 2050, and the other is an aspiration for a clean electricity system, it's net zero electricity system by 2035. They've taken a couple of actions to deliver upon that 2035 aspiration. One of them was some pretty significant funding that was in the budget this past spring. That was the carrot. And the stick is going to be these clean electricity regulations. They were introduced in draft form. You'll remember your days on the Hill, Canada Gazette 1. So they were gazetted at the end of the summer, and we're coming down to the last 2 weeks of the 75-day comment period for all stakeholders to provide input into at least the first draft of the regulations. So that's where we're at right now. We're putting together our input into these draft clean electricity regulations.
And what do they say? Generally, I'm sure there's a lot of detail in them, but what's the thrust of them?
Well, the principal thrust here, first off, as a country, we're getting off coal by 2030. So that's already off the table when talking about 2035. So to further decarbonize the electricity system means you need to seek to reduce how much natural gas, or unabated natural gas, as we call it, in the system. So that's what the regulation is attempting to do. It's attempting to set the rules for reducing and eventually eliminating unabated natural gas. Now, that may sound like a bit of an odd word, unabated. That means natural gas electricity generation that does not have carbon capture attached to it.
Okay.
Right.
And
so that's the objective.
That's the objective. So I guess Electricity Canada has intervened and has published some reactions to that. I've read that you are saying that it's ineffective. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, our concerns, and we've got a number of them, but they have to do with the first off, the provisions in the draft regulation with respect to peak demand and how that works. So there are provisions in the draft regulations for in the event of high demand, how one would use a peak plant. The second area where we've got concerns is with respect to how cogeneration plants are going to be treated and how they're going to be counted. We have concerns as well about the prescribed life of an asset. So, for example, it really isn't a net zero grid by 2035. It's a kind of a glide path. So, like if you built a plant today, it would be able to continue to operate for 20 years, 25 years. That's part of the debate that we've got going on now. What is the prescribed life of an existing plant? So we will still have this kind of generation beyond 2035 as it moves to the end of its useful life. Question is how many years and how is that going to be treated? And then finally, the last one is with respect to carbon capture and how much carbon needs to be captured. there are pretty tight objectives that are found in the draft regulation that may describe where we ultimately will be with respect to that technology, but it may not be where we are to begin with, and so it is probably more stringent
Right.
than it needs to be if this
Right.
is going to be effective. And in the end, what we want to
Mr.
see
Bradley, I'm just
is
going to cut you off there. We do have to take a commercial break, so hold on
sure.
to that thought because it is a very important part of your mandate. Please excuse us. We'll be back after these messages.